Hello and welcome everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about Azure Virtual Desktops. First, we'll try to understand what is a AVD. AVD is similar to Windows Virtual Desktops. Using Azure Portal, we can deploy, publish, and manage the Azure Virtual Desktops. In this video, we'll perform hands-on lab using a Azure Portal. First, we will create Azure Resource Group. After that, we will deploy Azure Virtual Network inside our resource group, using which we will create a Azure Virtual Desktop. So let's go into Azure Portal. In the Azure Portal, click on Resource Group, click on Create button. Here, provide a resource group name, which is AVD-RG that I'm giving here, and then provide the region name. The region name will be West Europe that I'm choosing in the video. After that, if you click on Review plus Create, it will give the validation passed message. Just click on Create button, so which will deploy your resource group. So I can see the resource group AVD-RG is created. Now we will create a virtual network in Azure Portal. So go to the virtual networks, click on Create, provide the basic details like in which resource group you want to create the virtual network and in which region you want to create. So we are selecting West Europe as the Azure region to create the virtual network, and provide the virtual network name as AVD-Vnet. So in my example, I'm going to create as AVD-Vnet. If you have observed, the virtual network creation page is a little updated. So if you can see here, security page came before the IP address, where you can see Bastion, firewall, etc. details. We are not going to select them. We are going with the default option. In the IP address section, you will be able to see the IP address configuration blade is changed. Whereas earlier we were able to type everything manually. Now everything is auto-populated. Like in the sense, if you want to change any particular variable, you will have to click on certain options here. See, by default, it is not allowing us to update the IP address range of Vnet. So all we have to do is we have to use the options. And even if you see the subnet size, we have to change the slash subnet value. So those are the little modifications they have done in the virtual network deployments. So I'm going to change the subnet name as AVD-subnet, and I'm going with the default IP address and subnet details. I'm not changing anything else. So after that, I'm going to click on Review plus Create. So once that validation is successful, I'll go and create the virtual network. So I'm not changing any details, guys, here. I'm going with the default options only, whereas the IP address will be 10.0.0.0/16 as the virtual network IP address range, and the subnet range is 10.0.0.0/24. After this deployment, we will go to the resource and we'll also validate these details, whether the virtual network is created as expected or not. So the deployment is in progress now. Once the deployment is completed, we'll go to the resource and we'll validate these details. So I'll click on Go to Resource option. You can see the virtual network is AVD-Vnet, and you can see the address space as well. If I go to the subnets blade, you will be able to see the subnet name AVD-subnet and the IP address range. Now we will go to the step number 3. In this step number 3, we'll understand how to create a host pool for Azure Virtual Desktop using a Azure Active Directory authentication method. So AVD authentication method we can choose in the session host. First, we'll try to create a virtual desktop, Azure Virtual Desktop host pool, and in the Azure Virtual Desktop, click on Create a Host Pool. So in this creation, you will get the first basic blade where you will select the resource group. Then you will go and type the host pool name. I'm giving AVD-pool as the Azure host pool. Then I'm selecting the West Europe as the Azure region. After that, you have validation environment. Like if you want to test any kind of deployments pertaining to your Azure Virtual Desktop, you can enable this option. Since we are doing lab or demo environment, I'm not going to choose this option. Then after that, you have the group type, whether you want to publish a desktop or an application. As per your requirement, you can select any one of them. Then you have a host pool type like personal or pooled. Pooled means for session host, you can have multiple users connected. Personal means for single session host, only one user will be connected. So I'll create a separate video for this again. Just for now, just understand pooled and personal, we have two types. So I'm selecting pooled here. After that, we have load balancing algorithms, like we have breadth first and depth first. So for this also, I'll create a separate video where I'll explain and give a demo about breadth first and depth first algorithm for AVD. For in this video, I'm going to choose breadth first as the load balancing algorithm. So what it does is it will distribute the user connections across all the session hosts that are configured in my host pool. And I'm going to give maximum session limit as 2 because I want to limit 2 users for this single session host. Then virtual machines, here we can add virtual machines, or if you want to add virtual machines later also, we can add them later. So I'm going to add the virtual machines later, workspace also. So I'm not adding anything, I'm just creating a host pool here. So it is going to run the final validation. Once everything is good, it will give the validation message as passed. So here you can see, then I'm going to click on create button, which will deploy the host pool. Say for example, if you're deploying your host pool for the first time, ideally it will take a little long time compared to the time that is taking in my video, because I have created host pool multiple times. That is the reason it is getting deployed very quickly. Sometimes in some scenarios, even I have observed it will take little time compared to the time what is taking in this video. So don't worry in that, you'll have to wait and try to understand how much time it is taking. Now we can see the resource is successfully deployed. I'll click on go to resource. We can see AVD host pool is created successfully, but if you see the screen, total machines count is 0. That means there is no session host that is created. So in the next task, we will create the session host. So the next task will be how to create session host in the Azure Virtual Desktop. So we are going to create session host in the host pool. Now let's create a host pool session host. In the Azure AVD host pool, you have a session host option. Click on session host and click on add. So once you click on add, guys, you will be able to see add virtual machine to host pool. That is nothing but you are creating virtual machines in your host pool. That virtual machines are called as session host in the AVD. By default, basic blade in the add virtual machine to host pool will be pre-populated. You cannot modify them. So go to the virtual machines blade. Here provide the virtual machine name prefix. Like if you want to have multiple session hosts, all your session hosts will be created based on an image. So if you want to have a name prefix, so I'm giving AVD-VM here. So all my virtual machines will be created with this prefix. So AVD-VM 1, 2, 3, like that, it will create multiple session hosts here in the AVD pool. So I'm giving the name prefix as AVD-VM. So I'm okay with that. Then I'm going to say the virtual machine location is West Europe. I'm not looking for any high availability option. So I'm giving high availability as no. After that, we are going with a vanilla image here. So I'm selecting Windows. We can select any operating system here. So for our lab purpose, I'm going to select Windows 2019 Data Center. Later, you can select what is the SKU type, like how much of CPU and memory you're looking for the virtual machines to be provisioned with. So I'm selecting 2 CPUs and 8 GB. I'm not changing anything here. And how many session hosts you want to create? I'm selecting 2. What is the disk type you want to use? And if you want to enable boot diagnostics, so these all options, it's up to you. So whenever you want to enable boot diagnostics, you can enable, you can disable, how many instances you want, all these things you can create as per your requirement. After that, you're going to select the virtual network that we created. So I'm selecting AVD-Vnet and AVD-Subnet, and remaining details I'm going with the default option, NSG, etc. After that, you can see domain to join. You remember I was saying Azure AVD deployment with Azure AD. So here is the option we have to select Azure Active Directory. If you want to use on-prem, you can use on-prem. In case if you want to enroll for Intune, you can select yes. If you don't want to enroll, you can click on no. Then you have to provide a local username for this session host. Like I'm providing Azure admin. and a password following for the particular username. So this is the local username for your session host, guys. You can also log into the session host by using a Active Directory domain ID or a on-prem Active Directory domain ID by adding the machine to domain. So in this video, we'll log in using Azure Active Directory credentials. So I'm going to the next option, tag. We are not adding any tags in this AVD. I'm going to the create button. So once you click on create, if all the configuration is looking good, it will give you the message validation is passed. So let's wait for it to complete. Yes, validation is successfully passed. I'm going to click on create button. Once you click on create button here, again, it is going to create multiple virtual machines, right? I'm in this example, we are creating two virtual machines. That is nothing but two session hosts. So for this virtual machine deployment, obviously it will take a couple of minutes of time. Since we are creating two session hosts, that means two virtual machines that are going to deploy in the host pool. So it will take a little time. So for your understanding, session host is nothing but a virtual machine, guys. Whatever the virtual machines we are creating in the Azure portal, those virtual machines also we can add to the Azure AVD by following some process. If you want to configure virtual machines directly in the AVD, this is the process that you can create a host pool with session host. So whatever the session host we are creating, that will be directly added to the host pool in this video. So once after the deployment of the session host, we will go to the session host blade and we will validate whether the session hosts are visible as healthy and available. So we can see the deployment is complete because I have skipped that part, which is taking time. I'll click on go to resource. In the AVD host pool, you can see total virtual machine 2 unavailable as 0 because two virtual machines are available. So if I click on session host, you can see the virtual machines AVD-VM-0. So this is the name prefix that it is following. So all good till here, I believe. So now I'm going to the next task. The next task will be assignment of application groups to the AD users that we'll do in the Azure portal. Go to the Azure AVD host pool. Here, click on the application groups. You can see one default desktop group that will be published when you create your host pool. So this is the desktop default application group, guys. Just click on AVD pool DAG. So this is your application group name. In this application group, click on assignments. In the assignments, click on add button. After you click on add button, you will be able to select the Azure Active Directory users. I'm going to select two users from the Azure Active Directory user list. I'm clicking on select. So which will add the users to this assignments. So once this job is successfully completed, we will be able to see two users that are added in the assignments. That means these two users are having permissions to this particular application group. Now we will go to the next task, that is assigning permissions to the AD users at the resource group level for accessing this AVD session host resources. We'll go to the Azure portal. In the Azure portal, go to particular resource group of AVD host pool, then click on access management, that is IAM, and then click on add and add role assignment. In the role assignment, select a particular role. In my example, I'm taking the role as virtual machine user login. I'll select this particular role. I'll click on next. In the select members, I'll select a user for whom I want to give this particular access. And then I'll click on review plus assign, which will assign the permissions to this user once after this particular job is successfully completed. Likewise, I also want to add one more user to this resource group IAM. So for that, again, I'll repeat the same process. I'll click on add role assignment. Here, I'll select the role as virtual machine admin login. So this is another role that I want to give for another user. I'll select this role, and in the select members, I'll select the new user ID for whom I want to give this particular role. So I selected the second user and I'm clicking on review plus assign. So in this example, I have assigned two roles, that is virtual machine user login, where user can log in as a normal user, and the admin login, user can able to log in as admin to this virtual machine. So that is done. Now we will go to the next task, that is creating AVD workspace in the host pool. In the Azure Virtual Desktop, you will have an option called Workspace. So click on the Workspace, click on Create. After clicking on Create, you will be getting the basic blade. Select the resource group and subscription. After that, you will have to provide the workspace name. I'm providing AVD-workspace. And you can give a friendly name as per your requirement. This is what it will come to the users when they log in. So I'm providing VDI workspace. And description, it is not mandatory, it is just an optional. You can provide a description as well. After that, you have to select the location. I'm selecting West Europe as the location. Then if you want to assign or if you want to attach your application groups, you can attach the application groups also here. In my example, I'll attach them separately. So I'm going to next options. I'll create this workspace without adding any application group. So I'm clicking on review plus create. So it is running the final validation. If everything is good, it will show me the validation passed. So I'm going to click on create button, which is going to deploy the workspace under my AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop. So once this Azure Virtual Desktop is created, I'll go to the virtual desktop and I'll show you how it will look like. So I'll click on go to resource now. As the deployment is completed, you can see the workspace visible here. Workspace is nothing but the place where user can able to see the applications that are published to them. Now we are going to add the application group to the workspace. Go to the workspace that we created, click on the application groups and click on add button, which will list the applications that are there in our session hosts. So we can see default desktop app. Just click on plus sign and I'll click on select button. So this is going to add the applications to the workspace. So once this is added, we will be able to see the application group to the workspace, and you can also see the user count as 2. That means we have assigned 2 users to this particular application group. If I click on the application group, if I go to the assignments, you will be able to see the 2 users. At the end of this video, I will test the application group connectivity with the test user. So this is the process of adding application group to the workspace. Next, we will perform updating RDP properties of host pool session host to add them to the Azure Active Directory domain. For that, I'm going to Azure Virtual Desktops and I'm selecting host pool that I created. Here you can see 2 virtual machines. Virtual machines are nothing but the session host that we created in our host pool. So if you go to the session host, you will be able to see the 2 virtual machines that we created. So these are the 2 virtual machines that we created, but these are not added to the domain. These are just a work group machines. If you want to add these machines to the domain, we are going to perform a simple task. So I'll paste that command also in the video comment section. So that command, you have to go to the RDP properties of the host pool and click on advanced option and paste the command that I'm going to mention in the comment section of this video. Just paste the same command as is in the RDP properties and save the configuration. What it does means it is going to add your session host machines to the Azure Active Directory. So once you update the command and once you click on this save button, it will go and give you the successful message. So that means your machines will be added to the Azure Active Directory, so that the Azure Active Directory users will be able to log into your session host with their Azure Active Directory credentials. That is the purpose of command we are adding here. So this is going to enable us to log into this session host using Azure Active Directory credentials. Even we can also use our on-premise credentials if you are using a domain controller when we are creating the session host. Since we have used Azure Active Directory as the domain for our session host, that is the reason we are adding them to the Azure Active Directory domain by using a command that I'm going to paste in the comment section. So follow the same steps and see if you're able to achieve the same result that we are getting in this particular video. So once after performing this task, we'll go to the final step of our video. So that is nothing but we are going to log into the AVD session with a particular user for whom we have given the access. So I'm going to incognito mode, and I'm pasting the URL path. This URL also I'll paste in the comment section. So just paste this URL in our incognito mode, which will ask you to authenticate. So I'm going to use the user that I have created in my Azure Active Directory, for which I have given access also in our previous steps. I'm using this user ID and I'm using the password. So this is a newly created user. I have not used it before. So that's why I have to update the password. So I'm going to change the password of this user so that it will allow me to log into this particular portal. So once the user password is updated, I will be able to log into this Azure AVD with this user for whom I have given access in the Azure AVD portal. See, it is not taking the password. I'm going to change the password to another one. So let me try again. I'll click on sign in. So it is accepting the new password. By defaultly, it is asking me to set up MFA. So I'm going to skip it for now, and I'm going to log into this RD web portal. Once it successfully authenticates, you will see the screen of the workspace, guys. So this is the workspace that we have created. So you can see VDI workspace and session desktop. That is our application group. So I'm going to click on connect. Here again, it will ask me for the credentials, the user credentials. So in case if there is any issue with the user credentials, it will ask you. If there is no issue with the user credentials, it will directly launch the RDP connection for you. Okay. So when we are testing, we will get some errors, because even I also got some errors during the testing. So when I'm doing the lab, I'm presenting you without any errors. So once after you enter the credentials of the user again, it will launch you the default desktop application, because that is the desktop that has been published in our application group. So you can see the user, test user, is able to log into the Windows 2019 desktop application. So this is within the browser itself. It is not going to give you extra application. Within the browser, you are getting a desktop application that is published to the user, and user is able to log into that particular desktop application as well. You can see the username as test user. I am logged into this desktop application within the browser only. And you can switch to this workspace again in case if you are having multiple applications, you can open them in the same browser. You will have different tabs. You can switch between the tabs as well. Now again, I'll come to the Azure portal, where I'll just show you the applications like workspace we have created. This is the workspace, VDI workspace. That is what we can see in the user login, VDI workspace. And session desktop, this is the default application. If I go to application group, you can see the default application that is named as session desktop. So this is a default application. Even we can change the names as per our requirement, guys. So whatever the naming conventions we want to use, we can change the naming conventions. So you can also validate the user is test user with which I logged in. For this user only, I have given the access in the Azure portal. So the user is getting access without any issues. In this desktop, I can use the desktop as a normal desktop, like how I can use, or I can use this server as a normal server, like how I can use, because this is being published to a user. So I'm creating one text file here, and I'm going to save the file in this particular session desktop as one file. And I can see the file is also getting created successfully. This marks the end of this particular session, guys. If you're liking the video that I'm uploading in this YouTube channel, please share with your friends and subscribe to my channel if you have not yet subscribed. Thank you for your time.